It would not be current times if there wasn't a little bit of Blizzard, sort of trying to clean things up in the game and sort of doing the, you could say, desexualization push. So a few things have happened. I think the easiest one to talk about is the big love rocket, which has been turned into the X-45 Heartbreaker. Now, there's a few different ways the big love rocket could go. I mean, one of them is if you sort of imagine some like mega exaggerated, real plush. I mean, the zebra pattern's even there, sort of pimp mobile.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine that. I mean, that's sort of what they're going for. That's one way you could take it. The other way you could take it is love rocket. Penis. Penis often involved in the making of the love. Big dick joke.
Sometimes, yes, I've heard that.
Big dick joke. So in a world where if you're to say that people could take this as a dick joke, and it's also a world where, bros before ho-ho-hos or a joke like that gets removed from the game, then I think you can obviously see them turning it into the X-45 Heartbreaker, because that is just a little bit more generic. It's not tied to, it's like a bit less sort of genitalia tied in its maybe its name or something. I think that's probably their internal justification for this change. Another thing that maybe something we wouldn't know is perhaps maybe the developer who implemented this is somebody who's also been implicated in sort of misdeeds or something. So there was that. I think from what I could see, the player reaction was basically just like, what?
Yeah.
This isn't really, what are you doing? You're trying too hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of these changes are definitely for their internal purposes as opposed to for players at this point in time.
I think that is the case. Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah. I mean, Clyde Hunter's saying they should call it the X-69. Like, that, yeah, if you're going to do this, that would be funny. And, I mean, yes, that's a sex position. Oh, no. Oh, no. I mean, that's funny. It's a joke. Why not? Yes, that would be funnier. I totally support it being called the X-69. Because, I mean, at least then it would be still sort of a funny sex joke instead of Heartbreaker. Like, oh, that's a bit less. A bit less fun. So there was that, and then there was also the Twin Consorts fight, which has now been changed to the Twin Imperials. So, I mean, consorts, clearly that is a word that over there at Blizz they're not particularly thrilled with. So this is the sort of thing, there's sort of maybe sort of sexualized things that they're trying to remove from the game, which, it's a bit weird, like playing Final Fantasy XIV, like there is sex and swearing and the Mikote prostitution thing as well, all of that's going on because I guess what they're trying to do in FF14 is do a lot of world building and to make a world that feels rich and believable. And of course, sexuality is going to be a part of any rich and believable world that is a bit more targeted at an adult audience. Which, that's the thing with WoW, I mean, it always used to be more of, for all ages. I mean, not literally, I think it was like a 12 plus or something. But, I mean, nowadays, let's be real, it's definitely an older crowd playing it.
Yeah, so, which is why it feels so strange. You're definitely, that's why I think they're definitely doing this for a little bit of peace of mind internally as opposed to any strong external reason.
Yeah.
But it's not, especially this one's really not a solid look for like the kind of standards they hold themselves to, simply because Consort has so many meetings, as we have here, their own justification for it is very different to what, it's almost a thing of kind of like they're protesting a bit much, where they're looking at and no one's going, that's like a really weird thing that no one liked. People are they're looking at the Dungeon Journal going, oh no, we understand what's going on here. Same with all of the Dragon Consorts. Like there's literally a Hearthstone card called Dragon Consort.
Yeah, and like Alexstrasza has a consort.
Yeah, look, that's how the dragons name their partners. They are consorts.
Yeah,
they haven't changed that.
A consort is I believe like the definition, like a consort is the romantic partner of a regent, like a king or a queen. So I'm pretty sure in like the UK, like Prince Philip was the consort of Queen Elizabeth. That's an example.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, maybe are they thinking that there's more? I mean, there's a few things we get into the Dungeon Journal, like if it's more of a sort of a sexual and possessive and sort of objectifying thing, and maybe if it was like a sort of a twin concubine, because I think concubine is the one that's more kind of the sort of the sex angle. So yeah, if we go to the dungeon journal though, so the twin consorts are said to be the greatest of the Thunder King's treasures. So you know that they are, I mean, quite literally being objectified there, but there's a reason for it. I would say where you know Lei Shen is the Thunder King. He's a total dickhead.
He's a tyrant.
He's a tyrant. He's a real. Lei Shen is a nasty piece of work. So, you know, having these two twin consorts here as treasures, I mean, yes, that's obviously the sort of thing that is distasteful to our sensibilities, but also it's a character that's a villain. So I would imagine a villain would be doing things that are distasteful to our sensibilities. That just kind of makes sense. It's one of the things that makes them villainous.
Yeah, otherwise, they would just be people, wouldn't be villains.
Yeah. Rumored to be the only female Mugu in existence, Lei Shen keeps his trophies close and their combined arsenal against interlopers closer. So that was in the dungeon journal where, you know, it definitely, this gives you a vibe where they are, you know, if they're rumored to be the only two sort of female Mugu in existence, then it's kind of like, you know, they kind of exist for the sake of Lei Shen, the Thunder King, the evil tyrant, to be like, ha ha ha, look, these are the only two female Mugu and they are my consorts.
Well, except for the fact that they aren't the only female Mugu in existence. And also, well, it's a kind of thing where it's like, if you look at the truth of it, if you look at the truth of Lei Shen's character and you look at what like Ian says here, that's not any of the connotations that people see when they see, you know, they see treasures. That's not how it is, basically, literally.
Yeah, so if we go to the twin consorts, this is actually some words from Ian himself back in 2013, 14? 13?
13, I think.
13. Yeah, yes, because this is the patch I started this channel in. Well, properly sort of started it. So yeah, Ian said, players may have noticed the complete absence of any female Mugu in their exploration of the continent of Pandaria. Players who look closely at the celestial twins will note that they seem quite literally carved out of stone. So this is where the lore comes in. Indeed, these were specifically created by Lei Shen and empowered to serve and guard him. They are a direct reflection of his will, rather than any broader sense of Mugu culture as a whole. An earlier version of the concept for the fight had them actually being spirits of the sun and moon, but that didn't feel quite right, and we all know the only true spirit of the moon is a loon, and clearly she was not locked away by the Thunder King. So this is quite literally a thing where Lei Shen is like, I guess with all of the things that Lei Shen can do, he has like forged these twin consorts. So it's something where it's like, I mean, I don't know if he saw like the other dynasties are like, oh, there's concubines and there's queens going on. And, you know, interesting. Shall I have that? Yeah. And then, you know, he goes and he sort of makes it, and it's a sort of thing where you're like, okay, so, I mean, there's one where like, did you just go and make 2 sex slaves for yourself there, big man? Which, you know, would be a thing that would be fitting for an evil tyrant, but also we don't actually literally know if that's even a thing because we don't really know how Mugus work. Yeah, well, I mean, they're made of stone, I mean,
they're made of stone, but also like if they're empowered to serve and guard him, from the prospect of what you would imagine of a tyrant king, that wouldn't be the idea. Yeah, that wouldn't be that doesn't fit into any of Lei Shen's MO, as far as we understand it, unless people are wildly casting, you know. I was going to say wildly casting accusations, like don't falsely accuse that dictator things you didn't do, but you know what I mean. It's the idea of he is focused on militaristic might, to a single-minded degree. I think if you look at he's got guards and go, well, I know what you're at, Lei Shen. That's maybe don't project quite as much. If you get what if you get what I'm saying, I can kind of understand how you think away, but
people would say like if they are just guards, then why did he make them in a female form, like as an example?
Because here you literally go, because there are very, very few other female Mugu, almost none. So the ability to create life, he can create something unique. He can create something unique to guard him. You know, they are a very striking figure, being female Mugu. They're unique. It's the same. It would almost be the same idea as just having anything unique
like
for a king,
for the character in a way.
Yeah, you're like, oh well, holy shit, he made the only 2 female Mugu. around, and they guard him. So if we go anywhere near him, we'll be killed. That's a pretty strong sense of status. And if you're trying to think of what a villain's character would be, based on what we know of Lei Shen, based on how he goes about, subjugating the entire of Pandaria, kind of militaristic, certainly fits the MO more than the Black Temple Den of Mortal Delights. He didn't have that. They're in a big empty room, standing there waiting to kill people who come by. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I think then the thing that maybe, perhaps this is something where, because I believe it was only after this that they added female Mugu into the game.
I believe so. I think so.
Now, are they Stone Rod or are they like Mugu?
I don't actually know.
I kind of forget exactly. So it could be a thing where
either.
they added them in, and then like retroactively they felt weird about the way that this was portrayed or something. I mean, overall, it does seem like this is something that just about nobody cares about, and maybe people just see it as like Blizzard are trying too hard. And then there's a lot of people who are also saying like, oh yeah, well they're changing all these things in the game, but they're not really fixing their internal issues, which I can totally understand somebody feeling that way. The only thing is, I mean, the literal sort of developers, they're not really going to be able to fix those big issues, right? So it's kind of one doesn't really come at the expense of the other, and I think in this case the other is definitely going to be stifled by it being a big company with a lot of incentives that sadly don't always align with what's best for the workers, which is bad for them from just a basic moral perspective. Then it's also bad for the players because, well, it's the Marty O'Donnell quote, right? The developers of the Golden Goose treat them well, they'll continue to lay golden eggs. So if your developers are existing in a little bit of a hellscape, and then you're like, oh, well, why aren't the eggs golden anymore? Oh, we've scrubbed the gold lining off the geese and, fattened it up for foie gras, and now it's all, horrible. Or, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can completely understand the motive for changing it. It's just kind of, it feels, as a player, it just kind of goes, what are you doing that for? Like, was there something wrong with it? Because if there's something wrong with it, then we're going to look at all of the other things similar and assume there's something wrong with that. But if they're changing just a little bit here and there, it kind of feels like, I don't know, because obviously it's likely well-meaning on their end. It's just like what's the point? I mean, there's no reason to be annoyed by it outside of the fact that is there a potential chance that this will soften a game where you've got a Tyrant King who's allowed to subjugate an entire realm, have that whole story of rebellion that that let's not beat around the bush, closely mirrors real life in more than a couple of situations, and then they're like, he wouldn't be unreasonable towards women, that Tyrant King. Like,
yeah,
I get it, but still, it just kind of I think it hurts the overall feeling of the world largely, especially if they're implying all those things that I didn't think about before. So.
It's that thing where it's like that all of these things happen in Eorzea, as an example, and it feels like a real world because all of that is portrayed in a believable way within the logic of that world. So I guess for a lot of people, they're going to feel like, okay, so you're kind of trying to make all of these things that could be seen as sexual. You're trying to make them all squeaky clean, but then in the last expansion, Sylvanas went and burned down a tree full of civilians, like killing thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of souls. And it's just that weird thing where people are like, okay, so you're. Maybe this also happens in movies, right? Where sometimes movies have got to play it, super, super safe with like any sexuality or things like that. But then they can have, complete crazy over the top violence and stuff. Yeah. And it's like, well, why are we, what's up, right? So people feel weird about that. So yeah, it's, I guess that thing where it's like they're softening all of this, but their story as time goes on really is beginning to feel like a 14-year-old read Nietzsche. And is just kind of doing this modern edgy arc that's all shocking and I will set the world free, or I will set you all free. Azeroth is a prison. And you're like, oh my god. So I think it's just that weird thing where there's parts of the game where Azeroth and Warcraft isn't really feeling like it was to people, and then maybe they see some things sort of be sort of changed and scrubbed up in the past. And it's just that weird thing of like the game right now, it feels like it's both super soft, but then it's like super soft and like kind of Care Berry and huggy. And then it's really, really edgy really edgy in aspects of its plot, and that just feels a bit weird and anachronistic, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then I think also people probably see this and they're maybe worried about the Den of Mortal Delights, or they're worried about, you know, like thematic things from the past, you know, in the game sort of done by villains or stuff, and they're kind of worried that those things will be sort of changed and tinkered around with.
Yeah, it's really awkward. All it does to me, honestly, is create this weird sense of distance that kind of feels like, well, okay, this is an awful world, but it's also really clean. Kind of feels very. I mean, I think we've used this comparison before, but it feels very Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
Where you're like, this clearly doesn't, like, you know, I see what you're trying to do, but it just doesn't mesh. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't work for like people trying to engage with what kind of story you're telling or what kind of world you're trying to craft. It's just, yeah, here's a weird mesh of different values that come in, and it's literally opposing each other at times. It feels very, very, very strange.
Yeah, so I suppose, like, as we try to get to the bottom of that's,
Yeah.
you know, why there's, I suppose why it's being talked about, really, for the most part. So there's that. We'll see what happens as time goes on, I suppose. It'll be very interesting to see with Aradath. Will they re-record VO lines? Because Makari has said a few times, I mean, it just seems like an expensive solution. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do or anything, because that is more directly, literally a reference to somebody who's now no longer at the company, seemingly for doing bad things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Right.